Good morning. Good morning. September is Suicide Prevention Month. So we're going to look into suicide from a little bit different perspective here. Today we're going to talk to someone who actually had planned to end her life. She actually had planned this. Now, depression has a goal. And depression's goal is to separate you from the herd. Once it's got you separated from the herd, then it wants to make you feel useless and hopeless. Then it wins. Depression is so powerful that last year, 49,000 people took their lives in the United States. My guest today is my friend, Debra Holz. Now, she is a #1 best-selling and award-winning author. Her book is Out of the Darkness, Aligning Science and Spirit to Overcome Depression. Now, Debra had planned to become another suicide statistic. That was her plan. You're going to hear her story today. Debra, welcome to Life Altering Events.
Thanks, Frank. I'm happy to be here.
Debra, last time you were on the show, your book, now #1 bestseller and award-winning, was about to be released. All right, tell us how that went. What was that experience like?
You mean once it was released?
As you released it, what happened
Yeah,
since the release?
well, my experience was that, first of all, without your help, Melissa's help, it wouldn't have become a bestseller because I had no idea how to go about that. You know, I've joked with you before that I wrote a book. I thought it was good. I thought everybody just buy it. And I'd be on Oprah, I'd be on every talk show, and it'd become a international success, translated into hundreds of languages. But anyway, that's not reality. And you, because you showed me how to achieve bestseller status, that was pretty exciting. It was also very surprising for me.
A little nerve-wracking as you're going through the process.
Very, very nerve-wracking. But Frank, as you kept telling me, trust the process. So I was like, oh, all right. And I trusted the process, and it worked out beyond my wildest expectations.
Now, it's gone beyond just being a #1 best-selling book. It also won an award. Tell the viewers about that.
So I submitted my book to the Author's Zone, which is a yearly award program, and I won, again, very surprisingly. I won first place, nonfiction, and yeah, so that was surprising.
And this is your first book.
It's my very first book. Hopefully there will be more once we get this whole other situation settled.
Next thing moving, exactly.
Yeah.
Debra, you had set a time and a date and a method to take your own life. What led to that point? What got you to that point of despair?
What led to that point was 50 years of suffering with depression. My earliest memory of feeling depressed, I was 4 years old. And of course, I didn't have a word for it at that time, but looking back, my earliest memory, I was probably depressed before that, but that was my first memory of just feeling lost and alone in the world. And it happened during a time where my mother had voluntarily given my brother and me up to private foster care. And the shock of it and how it happened, if my brain wasn't already wired for depression then, it was wired then. And so with the following 50 years, no matter what I did, underlying everything was depression, from mild to moderate to severe to bedbound depression. And I had seen every psychiatrist, well, not every psychiatrist, but dozens. Over 50 years, I don't even know how many I'd seen. I've been on many antidepressants and other psych drugs, and I never felt better. I, in some cases, got worse, and I was tired of it. I didn't want to live that way anymore. And what preceded that moment that led to me deciding that was it, I'm done, I'm leaving this planet, I'd accomplished a lot. With depression, I managed to graduate from high school a year early, because I had to get the hell out of school. I didn't like high school. And I got an undergraduate degree. I attended graduate school. I married my Ivy League romance successful husband. I had 2 beautiful children. I built a beautiful house, and I was still depressed. Even the birth of my children, while it was a joyous event, it actually catapulted me further down the despair path. And so no matter what I tried, I got a new husband. I was still depressed. No matter what I tried, I never felt better. So I was done. I mean, the soul can only handle so much pain, and I was done. One of the things I do like to share with people, especially people who haven't been severely depressed, is depression isn't just this mental thing. It's also physical. The stress that depression puts on your whole being affects your body. So at that point, I was in so much pain, just joint pain, muscular pain, not just despair and hopelessness, that I came to the conclusion that there's no reason to continue living like this. And since I'd never found a solution for my depression, I tried every traditional thing there was. Like I said, the drugs, talk therapy, tell the same old story over and over again about all the trauma of my childhood, same old story over and over again, and I never felt better. So I decided it was time to quit.
Then there was this moment. You got it all planned out. You even
Yeah.
wrote a letter to your children. Is that right?
Right.
So you're ready to do this. It's going to happen. The
Yeah.
only person missing was Dr. Kevorkian, right?
Yeah.
And then you had this what if moment. What was that what if moment?
The what if moment was, I want to precede the what if moment. I was actually excited and relieved that I was going to be out of my misery soon.
Wow.
I hadn't thought it through too well. And most people, when they're that depressed, they don't think rationally. So they think, well, death is a solution. And that's what I thought. And I was sitting there. I had prepared all the components in my life on my kitchen table. I'd written the notes, and I advised the then husband in a note to please. My children were away with their dad for the weekend, which is when I was going to do it on Friday, and they were going to be with their dad from Friday on to Sunday. So I even wrote him a note and said, please, whatever you do, will you please clean up the stuff so my kids don't have to come walk into that. So at that moment, when I was fully prepared, a thought from inside me, somewhere above me, I don't know where it originated from, but the thought was just a simple, what if there's something you don't know? And my response to that thought was, I've tried everything. And the only thing I never did was ECT, which is electroconvulsive therapy, where they like shocked your brain. And One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That's what happened to Jack Nicholson. So I didn't want to do that. And the thought repeated, but what if there's something you don't know? Isn't it worth just one more look? So I stopped what I was doing, because I figured, well, I can always kill myself later. I stopped what I was doing. Seriously, that's what I thought. It's like, well, if whatever this is doesn't work, I'll just kill myself later. I'll just put it on pause for now. And the reason I can smile about it now, I mean, I was at the deepest, darkest despair, the dark night of the soul. And I can laugh about it now because, and not to discount anyone who's at that point, but it's so ridiculous. It's like the most irrational thing that, in one way it was rational. If I can never get better, I can't live like this anymore. But on the other hand, it's not a solution for anything. You're dead, and you don't know what the repercussions are on the other side if you have spiritual beliefs. So I pushed myself away from the kitchen table. I went upstairs to where my desktop was at the time, and I put into search engines, alternative methods for healing depression, alternative ways to healing depression. And I don't know, it was because I was saying alternative, because if there's an alternative to the traditional stuff, let's see what comes up. And up on my screen popped a book by Gary Zukov. I really hope he reads my book someday because I credit him for a lot of stuff. But in the screen, like on a sidebar, pops up this book called The Dancing Wu Li Masters. It's Dancing WULI Masters, which means Patterns of Organic Energy. And it was basically a layperson's explanation of quantum physics. And I am the most unscientific person ever, but I could read the book and understand it. And that was his intention, to break it down for non-scientific people, to explain how photons and electrons and atoms, what that's all about, and that we're connected to everything through quantum physics. And then how it was practical for me was, he explains, and I began to understand energy. And I like to say, not at the 1960s woo-woo hippie type energy, but actually scientific information about how energy works. And as I progressed down that path, why that book was there, I don't know, because it was about depression, but I do know now. So I thought, this is really interesting. Maybe I am connected to everything, starting with the foster care situation and an unstable family. I just felt I wasn't connected to anything or anyone. I didn't even have friends those days. Now I have plenty of friends, but I just felt alone in the universe. And the way it was explained about, I'm repeating myself, but about that we're connected to everything and everyone. So at that point, I should back up. I ordered the book for 49 cents. It was written in 1979. And I got it through Amazon, of course. And I got it the next day. And I started reading that book, still pausing my plan. I put all the components on my kitchen table away in a closet, still saying I can go back to this. But through a series of things that I found through initially encountering his book, I learned about neuroplasticity. And everybody who knows me knows I am passionate about neuroplasticity. And it sounds like a big word, but all it means is the brain's ability to rewire itself, the brain's ability to change. And I was always told, and this is one of the tragedies about traditional psychiatric treatment, therapeutic treatment. I was always told, and was generally believed, that your brain is hardwired by 25 to 28. And at that point, I was in my 50s. And I came across a neuropsychologist who wrote in 1949 that it's not true. The brain is able to grow and change and develop at any age. And when I hooked onto that, like, I can change my brain, it became my passion. And so I set about, I'll just put this in, to change your brain, and I discuss it at length in my book. You have to examine what are your underlying beliefs and thoughts that fuel your depression. And I did that. I looked at those thoughts. I had so much fear. I had a lot of fear about death because of fundamentalist Baptist upbringing. And I set about to change those underlying beliefs and thoughts. And what was crucial about that is when I discovered that I'm not my thoughts, that I could say one day I'm a terrible mother and the next day I have a good day with my kids. I'm a good mother, and all kinds of other contradictions. So your thoughts are malleable. They're usually affected by what's going on around you. But I learned I'm not my thoughts. And what am I? I learned, because of quantum physics, I am the observer of my thoughts. And if if someone's spiritually inclined, they could say that's your soul, but it's consciousness. You're the observer. So that was revolutionary for me to know I'm not my thoughts. I don't have to believe all that stuff. And when you have so many negative thoughts and beliefs, it affects your neurochemistry. All the feel-good neurotransmitters that, commonly heard about, like serotonin and dopamine. Because when you have a negative thought, it creates a repeated negative thought. It creates a neural pathway in your brain. And the neural pathways are what carry messages to your brain and release neurotransmitters, chemical and hormonal neurotransmitters. And an imbalance of that is what makes you depressed. And I fixed all that. I developed the methods for how to fix my brain, and I did. And as you know, I've been depression-free for 10 years, not even an inkling of depression after 50 years of depression. And I want to say I still feel normal human emotions like sadness. But there's a demarcation between sadness and depression. And even though when I say this, it might make somebody mad, for me now, to be depressed would be a choice. It would be a decision to forget everything I learned and just go back to the mire. And why would I want to do that? So
Exactly. Now you embrace this new model, and you got an awful lot of pushback. Tell us what happened there.
So the last psychiatrist I was seeing, I won't mention his name. The last psychiatrist, I've been seeing the man for 10 years. And he, at the point of my ultimate despair, I had been on 5 psych meds. I was a walking zombie. I was just numb. And I'd say the one thing that psych meds did for me is they do have the ability to numb your emotions, so you're not feeling your pain as intensely, but alcohol can do that too.
Yes.
And like, I like to qualify, as you know, that I'm not saying anybody shouldn't take their psych meds or anything like that. My opinion is, based on my experience, I'm not a physician, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a therapist, is that they can be useful in a emergent way. Like if it's an emergency, you're going to kill yourself for sure. But as a long-term solution, it's not a solution because it doesn't change your underlying thoughts and beliefs. It doesn't change the structure of your brain. For a while, it releases neurochemicals, a flood of neurochemicals, like the feel-good ones, but that depletes those neurochemicals. So anyway, so the psych guy, he kept telling me, this is genetic, you're going to be on drugs and therapy the rest of your life. Just face it. And I went to him and I said, I'm done. I'm not taking these medications anymore. I'm going to stop taking them. He said, he even got angry. He said, you can't do that. You do that, you're going to die. You're going to have a heart attack or you're going to commit suicide. And at that point, and don't recommend anyone do what I did, because I was lucky or it was a miracle. I don't know what it was, but I went all of them at once and I didn't die. And I was willing to take that risk because I wanted to die anyway. So I went off and he fired me as a patient. He called me a liar. Actually what happened is, he fired me as a patient. And then 8 months later, when I had been depression free for the first time in my life, I sent him an email. And his response was that I was lying and never contact him again. So
Wow.
I did it. I look him up once in a while to see what he's up to, but I never contacted him. I guess, like, wouldn't you be happy for me? But no, he was mad.
It's incredible. There's a standard of practice in the medical world and the psychiatric world, and a lot of it is funded by the pharmaceuticals. But whenever you come in with something, a number of doctors have told me this, that we start with this. That doesn't work. Here's 4 other drugs or 4 other things that we're going to prescribe. And one doctor even said to me, Frank, I left the medical profession because basically I felt I was becoming a legalized drug pusher.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sad because there's other ways to do this, as you found out.
Yeah, well, as you and I've talked about before, people go to a doctor and the doctor assumes you're there to get something to solve your problem. So that's how they're trained. I mean, it's not that I think they're all being malicious, but that's how they're trained. You come in, here's a prescription.
Exactly. Now, the response to your book has been really tremendous. It's done extraordinarily well. It's still gaining momentum. There's still people picking it up. And I understand you're creating a new program
Mhm,
based on the book
mhm.
that's starting very soon. Tell us about what that is.
So the name of the program is the membership subscription program. I currently I'm calling it the Depression Free Life membership, or Depression Free with Deb Holz. And in it, what I do is I initially, when somebody subscribes to the program at a very reasonable cost, they initially get my 6 stages, what I did, the 6 stages I did to heal my brain. And what will follow on a regular, consistent basis are monthly articles, even daily posts, and that the even more specific what I did, even more specific about the science, and precisely what I believe anyone can do to rewire their brain and live and create a joyful, peaceful life as I have now.
It's amazing.
Did
And
that answer the question?
this is something where um, you've broken it into 6 individual stages, as you mentioned, and you walk them through these.
Yes.
Does it start off with something like, I can't even get out of bed?
Yeah, I mean, I named that stage pandemonium because when you're chronically severely depressed, your life is going to be in chaos. For me, I couldn't get out of bed for weeks at a time. So I didn't pay bills. I was not taking good care of my children. My house was a mess. I couldn't work. I slept all the time. And so gradually I taught myself how to move, to start participating in life as I was learning the brain wiring techniques.
So in this program, if I understood it correctly, you may make a statement like that,
Mhm.
and you're not going to resolve something that catastrophic like that. Isn't going to happen like that.
No,
And so you give them pointers and tips. Okay,
yes.
we'll touch on that a little bit.
Well, the second tip that I give, besides how to just get out of bed, if someone's that extreme, and even if they're not that extreme, if you're depressed, you don't have energy, and
Right.
how to re-energize yourself. And then the next stage I talk about is open to possibility, meaning if you're going to pursue this, and I hope what I share in the program gives people hope step by step, that if you're going to pursue this, you have to have an open mind. You may have been told for years that it's drugs and therapy, and you have to be open to the possibility that there's another way. That's basically stage 2 is what happened to me at that moment at the kitchen table when I decided I was going to explore alternatives. The next one is next stage, stage 3 is learning and educating, where I share significant information about neuroplasticity, which is just brain wiring, neuroplasticity, how to rewire your brain, what I did, and using some understanding of quantum physics, simply energy, to fix myself. And so I went through a learning and educating process, and that's what I do in the membership. I educate people about that.
And that is so important because when you and I first spoke over a year ago, and I heard quantum physics, and I went, okay, and my head starts, eyes rolling back in my head like, God, I'm not a physicist, I'm not a neuroscientist, this is way over my head. But you break it down,
Mhm.
so to its most simplistic form.
Yeah,
It's
I've considered not even saying quantum physics in case it scares people. It's become kind of mainstream, but I am telling you, I almost didn't graduate from high school because I wasn't going to pass the science class I had to take. So that's how scientific my brain is. But no, all it is, it's about energy. When it's explained to you how we're comprised of, I think I haven't looked at it for a while, like 4 trillion atoms. And within those atoms is energy. And so how we can harness that energy, am I being too scientific?
No, you're
Okay.
being fine.
How we can, it helped me. You don't even have to have an understanding of any of that. I can just simply tell you energy, and there's so many examples that we can prove that energy, unseen energy, is a real thing. There's exercises that prove it, but you know, energy is a real thing, and we can use energy to help rewire our brain and change our perspective on what's true.
Now we're seeing more and more of this. People call it unconscious biases and trying to break a pattern of behavior or thoughts. Someone had told me, and I forget the exact number, but there are millions of thoughts that go through your head into your mind on a daily basis.
Mhm.
Most of them are dealt with subconsciously, subconsciously.
Mhm.
And that of all these things that are bombarding your six senses, only 50 or thereabout 50, you actually have to make a decision on. So it's that wiring those pathways is so critical. Is that correct? Because that thought
Oh
comes
yeah.
in and it follows the pathway you want it to, as opposed to what you had been doing.
Well, what you do is you train how your neurons wire and fire. You train new neural pathways. And I like to use the analogy of hiking, which I describe in my book. I'm an avid, passionate hiker, and I might take a familiar trail. It's comfortable. I know where I'm going. But then if I want to change and explore a different path and make a new path, it could be challenging. I mean, I may deal with sticker bushes or bears or biting insects or poison ivy. But when I get through the challenges of that and I forged a new path, I find a new outcome that I haven't been before. And that's how it's a good analogy for me, how I see how the brain wires, how you create new neural pathways, and how by creating new neural pathways, you can have a very different outcome than what you have. And I do want to mention this, not to give him business, but Dr. Joe Dispenza, who's a famous guy on this topic, he wrote a book called How to Break the Habit of Being Yourself. And he explained exactly what I did. And he actually, and I have thought about this for a long time. Now, don't get mad, people who are, medically oriented, but I think depression is a habit. It becomes a habit. And habits are just the neural pathways that have been created in your brain. Well, it's brushing your teeth every morning or any other habit you have. And habits can be broken. And like I just said, habits are about the neural pathways that you have. And so we're going to choose a new path.
That's outstanding. And basically, as I've told people who've asked me about what you're doing, as I said, why not interact with somebody who's been where you want to go? They've been where you are, but they've been where you want to go.
Mm.
And that's what's critical. And I think that's what's going to happen with this program. So how do people find out more about this program? Where do they go? What do they do?
They go to my website, which is debraholz.life, and that's DebraHolz as in zebra.com, no T in that last name. And in there is a link to the program.
Mm-hmm. And when what I understand is when they come to it, they're allowed to download an overview of your six steps. Is that correct?
When someone goes to my website, there's a link to free 6 steps. It's a guide, but it's an overview, the overview of what I did. And when you do that, if you choose, you can receive more information and updates about the membership program.
Outstanding. And from what I understand, you're looking to launch on September 20. So it's coming soon, correct?
Yeah, it's coming soon. All right.
Well, that's very exciting. It's also very nerve-wracking. Any kind of launch is nerve-wracking.
Can I add something?
Sure.
Because I didn't really touch on it that well. So the viewers, this is true, Frank, can tell that I'm a pretty happy person. But at the end of the road, it took me almost 8 months to learn the information I learned, and put into place the practices and exercises and methods that rewired my brain. All told, it was maybe a solid year. But so what I'm hoping to do is, everybody has to do it at their own pace, not feel overwhelmed, one step at a time. But hopefully, because I put the information together, people can do it more easily. And I've gotten feedback from people who read my book that tell me that they did some of what was in my book. And one woman wrote me that she's never experienced joy and peace the way she experiences now, having followed some of my methods. So in my program, I'll go into that in great more depth. And also, the reason I interrupted this to say this is, my life is joyful and peaceful. I am consistently, I don't like to use the word happy because happy is a transient word based on external things, but nothing can take away my joy and peace now, because I wired my brain for it. And yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I have a beautiful life now. And I was miserable back in those days.
And that's exciting. And that is
Yeah.
so exciting. Well, folks, Deborah, what last thing do you want to leave with the viewers before we end here?
Depending on where you are on your depression spectrum, 2 things. Hope, because there's hope. There's light beyond the darkness. And I'm really glad that I didn't give in and leave the planet, because I would never have experienced this. And the other thing, if someone's watching and they've been thinking about suicide, or even planning it, don't do it. Wait, stop, because there's something you don't know yet. And that's what I hope to share.
That's outstanding. Don't try to battle this demon by yourself, ladies and gentlemen. As we said in the beginning, its goal is to separate you from the herd, to take away your hope. Deborah's book and her program is going to give you hope. So as I said, we're just about out of time. Deborah, thank you again. The book is Out of the Darkness, Aligning Science and Spirit to Overcome Depression. You can get that on Amazon. Go to her website, check out the free overview of the 6 steps. Join this program if you have been suffering from depression or you have a loved one. Do not battle this alone. You can't beat it alone. Get some help. You can see this show on Roku TV, my podcast, on a new thing called Parade Deck, and my YouTube channel, which is now called Frank Zaccari. I'm going to send links to Deborah, and she'll post them everywhere she posts her stuff. And if you've been following her, she's been posting a great deal of information and will continue to. So if you use the YouTube channel, please subscribe. And as I say every week, let me leave you with this. None of us are in this alone. And the secret to walking on water is to know where the rocks are. Today, Deborah showed us where many of those rocks are. Join us again next week for another life-altering event. Deborah, thank you again.
Thank you, Frank.